Hi there. So, my name is Mike Naughton. I'm an attorney in town. I've come up here from Detroit, and my practice is completely litigation. In Detroit, I was a criminal defense attorney. I'm currently on the board of the Criminal Defense Attorneys of Michigan. It's a statewide group of criminal defense attorneys, and we deal with issues like this every day. And also, I do civil litigation. Something that consistently comes up is what to do with data. And we've listened to 3 speakers now. Dave, I think this touches you.
Yes.
I think this touches you, Mr.
Z.
Mr. Z. I'm Polish too. I can't pronounce it, but it definitely touches you. That's why I asked about your record of retention. It touches you too, I assume, if you're storing data. And one of the things that's particularly troublesome about storing data and being, I'm going to go into the definitions too, a remote computing service, is you have certain obligations. And it's twofold. You have obligations to the federal government as an investigator, and you also have obligations to another party seeking to obtain this data. Civil suit, a family lawsuit, any number of things. So this, for example, is just a picture I took just now. And I think we all kind of get how this goes with cameras, and there's all sorts of data that's embedded there. Here's our content. It's a photo of Mr. Z's feet. Pardon me for getting that, remember your first name?
Copyright infringement.
There we go. Look at those shoes. Yep. Someone's going to sue him for them.
Yeah,
so we got to protect that. And so what it was stored with? iPad, time, focal length, and we also get into men. And this is kind of cool, actually. I've litigated on this very, very issue. The location. I had a case. It was an arson case. And the data that was on the phone were pings on a tower. Because the alleged individual had been making text message with a friend. He was over on the west side of town in Detroit, and after all these pings, he came across town, and there was a trail just like this. 10 minutes before the arson, the last ping was 2 blocks away. The prosecution went to the company that had it. If they provided the company, your company, with a subpoena, you can't turn it over. You have to have a search warrant, especially for content. In that criminal case, the prosecution went at it with the search warrant, was able to get it properly, and I went to my client and said, we got a problem. Pled the case out. He did actually got probation. It was a good deal. So, how does this affect you? It was. Not for the city of Detroit, but you know what? I mean, I think everyone in this room kind of knows that.
Probation?
Knowledge is, yeah, he got an attempt too. But anyways, what I think we all know in this room is if you know something your opposition or market competitor knows, you have an advantage. In this case, the prosecution didn't know what to do with latitude and longitudinal data. I plugged it in. I mean, it was a breadcrumb trail right to an arson. So, know the data that you're storing, how you're storing it, and how you're retaining it. Like Lloyd's of London, I'm sure they're all over to make sure you've got a sound retention policy. Here's why. I'm not going to do more crazy war stories, but I want to get into this idea of the importance of it. The importance to you is civil liability. No one wants to get sued. And I get that. So let's see. Where's that?
There you go.
Under the federal law, this is who you are. A person or entity providing an electronic communication service to the public. So you're taking stuff from the public popcorn sale. Pop. I assume if you're on a site with a tent that goes up and the location of that tent, this is something that's stored by, you're using, what was it, not SharePoint, but Salesforce, thank you, yeah. That's stored. So this stuff has to be held, has to be stored properly. Same with the cars. In fact, your car situation is a big deal for civil liability. If someone gets in a car accident, Allstate, Hagerty, whomever, is going to want to know what was taken, especially when time comes for depositions. So this applies to you in what really I think is the most important point is for every violation, each an individual, it's a $1,000 fine, each and every violation. And so if you do a data dump, if someone serves you just something, and you turn over hundreds of records, you're looking at a massive civil liability from the federal government. This liability, like I said, is $1,000 per. Here's how you avoid it, and I'll get really quick on this and then we'll be done. Federal government has to have a search warrant. A civil suit, I'm generalizing here quickly, but for a civil suit, this statute is 18 U.S.C. 2703. You need an 18 U.S.C. 2703D order signed by a judge. That's what you need to release personal records that you have in your care and control if you're taking stuff from the public. Otherwise, you need signed written consent by the individual whose information is being sought. So John Q. Public, if there's a request to get whatever he's got on your website for renting cars in a family lawsuit dispute with his wife, 2703D order, signed consent from that individual. Oversimplification, but this is something I want to raise to this group because people are storing data. That's important. Data is huge. Data is what our businesses do. But please safeguard it and make sure if you're requested to turn it over, you do so appropriately. And with that, any questions?
Can you say that number again? The 18.UC?
Right, yeah, I know, legally. I know.
It's okay, I'm a nerd.
It's okay. Yeah, no,
He only charges $100 for that number.
That's right. 18 USC, which is US Code 2703, parentheses D. And that portion of the US Code is the criminal code, federal. Another question? Yes, ma'am.
So to what degree, if I'm not, I realize you're saying don't give it away unless you have these things.
Right.
But to what degree am I responsible for harboring this data for my, like, the security that I have placed
Sure.
so that no one else can get at this data? For example, Ashley Madison, of course.
Right. Interesting case with Ashley Madison. Number one, it's a foreign company, so they're not necessarily subject to this. It's a Toronto-based company. But hacking into someone's server and then is completely different to voluntarily giving data to someone else. So Ashley Madison, the Stored Communications Act doesn't apply to them. What would apply to Ashley Madison is if the millions of soon-to-be ex-wives are sending subpoenas or discovery requests and they're just handing them over. So that's the distinction. Hack, no Stored
I'm asking
Communications
what
Act.
degree responsibility do I have to protect this data from hacking?
Sure. First and foremost, I think you've got a responsibility to your customers. No one wants data to be out there. Absolutely not. And I think the best case in point in my mind is the federal government recently. With the hack that was done on the IPO office, I think it was, huge. It wasn't encrypted. Someone was able to walk in and take that stuff. I think a big first step, in a couple of these TC New Tech meetings I ask about encryption, I think that companies and small businesses that take data need to encrypt the data and be sure it's locked securely. So even if someone does walk in and take the hard drive, unless they've got that encryption key, they can't necessarily get the data. Any other questions? Was that too? Yes, sir.
So all our data is in Salesforce,
Sure.
in the cloud. I just assume they encrypt it.
Probably do. I don't know Salesforce. I don't know Salesforce's. I'm familiar with Salesforce. I don't use it as a platform, so I'm not necessarily savvy with how it operates. However,
But I guess that's a question we should be asking.
you should. Is it 256-bit encryption or higher?
Yeah.
128. I don't think cuts it anymore. You want to make sure that there's two types of encryption: encryption in transit and encryption at rest. Encryption in transit is data being sent over the tubes, as Ted Stevens called it, of the internet. That has to be encrypted, SSL encryption. And then on the location, the server itself, it has to be at rest encrypted. Yes, sir.
Michael, on our show, we talk about a lot of politics.
Okay.
And I've noticed lately in the news regarding Hillary Clinton's servers,
Right.
the email situation, they mentioned specifically that code 18 and go into.
Oh, no, that's a different code.
It is a different.
I talked about this actually on another radio station this week. The code, I didn't bring it. I can give it to you. That's a different code. That's mishandling classified information. And General David Petraeus was charged and convicted of the same code. The big thing with Hillary Clinton is what the ultimate question is going to be is, what did she have? Was it classified? And where was it stored? Under federal law, you can't store classified information in a non-approved spot.
Right.
By all indications, hdr22@clintonemail.com was not an encrypted server. It was running Windows 2008. Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't encrypted. They were able to access it through webmail, and it's all there.
But the question, I mean, to this particular type of storage,
Right.
different application, but it's basically the same type of violation of the law.
Different violations. This is a
Right.
different violation.
Totally different.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that that is how important it is as far as how it's encrypted and protected and things like that.
Absolutely. Something that's going to be more and more and more important, and I've litigated this in Detroit. And if you look me up in a former life, I represented the former mayor of the city of Detroit, Kwame Kilpatrick. This is where this started. And that was text messages and content, and how were they stored. And at that point, the law was different. You didn't need a search warrant. U.S. versus Warshak came out in 2010. Now you need a search warrant. That's a big deal. Now, today, it's the same sort of thing.
Right.
This stuff has to be stored, it has to be secured, and federal investigators, not even federal investigators, state, local, and federal government is very, very particular now about how they store data, especially for FOIA requests. There's been a lot of aggressive, even Hillary Clinton, there's a lot of aggressive litigation about FOIA, how things are stored, if they're stored properly. So this is a big deal for them.
Is this also follow-up
Yeah.
part of the Patriot Act?
No, Patriot Act's completely different.
Again, very good, thank you.
Sorry, right? Okay. Yes.
One more question. So if I'm emailing with somebody and that person gets subpoenaed for copies of like emails that we exchange,
Yes.
and they give them up without a warrant,
All right, different. It depends on where the email's stored. If they go to Google with a subpoena and Google hands it over with just a simple
let's say
subpoena,
it's stored on their, they're using Outlook and it's on their hard drive.
hard drive's different. So a remote computing service under the statute is something like a Yahoo, a Google, a Salesforce
Okay.
that stores it remotely in the cloud and gives it public access. Your desktop isn't a public access computer, so that it wouldn't apply to that. They could get your hard drive and do whatever discovery request they want with it. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. This doesn't apply to your computer.
So what if it's-
this applies to Google?
What if it is Gmail and they,
Yeah.
but since the person can actually access their own,
Right.
let's say, somebody sues, let's say I'm getting sued and they subpoena my customer
Yeah.
for copies of emails,
Yep.
and they just voluntarily give them to the guy that's suing me.
Mhm.
Does this sound like I'm talking about a real case? Is that a violation of that?
I know a guy.
This was a long time ago.
It could be
Yeah.
for you. Yeah.
Okay.
If your stuff was just voluntarily handed over, yes, it could be a violation. But it depends on the analysis of the Stored Communications Act is the origin of the electronic record.
Right.
And so if it's from your guy's desktop computer, this doesn't apply.
Right.
If Google turns it over, you've got application to Google or whoever the remote computing service was that handed it over.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you so much.